Eris 9 was meant to be quiet. Salt flats, turbine farms, a sky so clear the stars looked close enough to touch. Commander Elias Kane took a search and rescue rotation because quiet meant fewer alarms. The morning the hunters arrived, the wind changed. Every turbine along the western ridge slowed as if the air had thickened. Kane watched the blades drag through dawn. Power dip. Marla Soto called from the console pit. Not yet, Kane said. The instruments were steady. The horizon wasn't. A line of light opened above the flats, too straight to be lightning. The sky split like fabric, revealing bruise-colored depth behind it. Shapes slid through with no regard for gravity, sleek silhouettes that bent the eye. Soto swallowed. Commander, I'm getting a broadcast. Not on any band. The signal wasn't a frequency so much as a pattern pressed into the receivers. 3 pulses, a pause, 3 pulses, like footsteps in a dark corridor. Then the comm tower spoke in accented trade, clipped and ceremonial. Species acquired. Kane had heard first contact myths in the academy. Handshakes, translators, cautious smiles. This voice carried none of that. It sounded like a clerk stamping a form. His wrist display flickered as satellites went blind. The colony's long-range radar filled with static snow. Somewhere in the residential ring a dog barked, then fell silent, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Kane tasted metal and realized it wasn't the air, it was adrenaline, sharp and familiar, finally awake. He forced his hands to stop shaking before anyone noticed it. Across Eris 9, people stepped out of habs and workshops, drawn by the wrongness overhead. Security drones lifted, then hovered, as if their algorithms couldn't decide what they were seeing. Kane keyed his collar MIC all units, shelter protocol. Move people inside. Seal doors. Static, then a frantic voice. Gate 2, something landed outside the perimeter. It's standing there. Kane ran. The outer gate sat at the end of a concrete causeway cutting across the flats. A crowd packed behind the mesh. Kane shoved through to the front. It stood 10 meters beyond the fence. Tall, upright, plated like a statue carved from storm metal. 2 eyes burned ember orange under a ridged helm. No visible weapon. No hurry. Sergeant Dima Volkov raised his rifle. Identify yourself. The being tilted its head, measuring the question. It spoke through the tower speakers, perfectly amplified. Prey acknowledges predator. Predator acknowledges prey. Kane stared. We're not prey. State your intention. A ripple of orange light ran along its chest plates, like a heartbeat. Intention. Harvest. Intention. Sport. Intention. Record. Soto arrived, breathless, clutching a tablet. Commander, there are more. Drops around the colony. Kane looked past the fence. On the flats, other silhouettes stood in a widening ring, spaced evenly, each one an anchor in a net. They weren't attacking. They were arranging. Volkov hissed, we can take the one in front. Or that's what it wants, Kane said. The being's gaze wasn't hatred. It was appraisal, like a butcher judging weight. A child behind Kane started to cry. The sound carried, and the being turned its head toward it with slow interest. Kane stepped closer to the mesh. Stop looking at our people. Prey produces sound, the being said. Sound indicates fear. Fear indicates worth. Kane's jaw tightened. Then you'll be disappointed. The creature raised one clawed hand. Air shimmered. A globe of light unfolded, projecting a lattice map, streets, tunnels, shelters, every hiding place traced. Soto whispered, they scanned us. Eris 9, the being announced. Population, 31,000. Resistance, unmeasured. Classification, low value. Commencement, dusk. Volkov's finger tightened on his trigger. Kane caught his arm. No. They just told us when they'll start killing, Volkov said. They told us when their game begins, Kane replied. Soto's eyes searched his face. What's the plan? Underground, Kane said. Cut lights. Cut chatter. We don't give them a chase. The creature lowered its hand. The map dissolved. It took one slow step forward, close enough that Kane could see scratches on its plating. Prey speaks defiance, it said. Defiance indicates spirit. Spirit increases worth. Kane met its glow. We're not here for your rituals. Ritual is law, the being replied. Law is galaxy. A sharp crack sounded. A civilian fired a hunting pistol, hands shaking. The round struck the creature's chest and vanished in a flare. The being didn't flinch. The shooter froze. The creature turned toward him. Prey initiates contact. The man backed away. I. A beam lanced from the creature's palm, thin as a needle. The man dropped without a scream, smoke rising from a neat hole. The crowd surged backward. Security drones lifted to engage, then their lights blinked out and they fell like stones. Kane's world snapped into hard focus. The hunters weren't waiting for dusk. They were demonstrating terms. Volkov raised his rifle again. Kane shoved it down. If we shoot, they escalate. If we run, they enjoy it. Soto's voice shook. What do we do? Kane looked at the fallen man, the quiet smoke, the predator beyond the fence. Anger tried to rise. He locked it down. We disappear, he said. Kane spoke into his MIC, words clipped. All colony units, execute shelter protocol black. Tunnels only. No surface movement unless ordered. Kill lights. Kill music. Kill chatter. If you're outside, you have 60 seconds. Go. Soto blinked. Black isn't. It is now, Kane said. The crowd began to move, not stampeding, but pulling one another toward hatches and doors. Kane stayed at the fence a heartbeat longer, making sure the creature saw him remain calm. Volkov leaned close. You think that'll save us? Kane looked up at the torn sky and the hovering silhouettes like sharks in deep water. He thought of rescues that arrived too late. No, he said softly. But it'll change the taste. The being's voice followed as Kane turned away. Prey chooses silence, it said, tasting the concept. Curious. Kane ran toward darkness and preparation while the hunters waited, confident, ceremonial, unaware they'd just met prey that refused to perform. Eris 9 didn't fall in a single night. It was peeled. Underground, the colony became a body holding its breath, corridors packed with people, lamps shuttered, voices reduced to hand signs and mouth-thin whispers. Elias Kane walked the service tunnels with a grease pencil and a stolen map, marking 3 things: air, water, exits. Soto caught up near Pump Station C, hair tied with a strip of fabric. We've got 12 hours of oxygen if we seal the secondary shafts. Seal them, Kane said. And kill the vent fans. They'll overheat. Better heat than a trail. A technician argued with his hands. Soto translated, impatient. He says the hunters can't see heat. He says we're panicking. Kane knelt and circled the pump room. They mapped our tunnels in a minute. What they don't know is what we'll do with them. He pushed past families pressed to the wall. A toddler stared at his uniform like it could stop beams. Kane looked away. 2 days later, the hunters started taking people anyway. They didn't sweep the tunnels. They waited at surface access points and picked off anyone desperate enough to surface for food, medicine, news. Their kills left a smell like scorched copper and an absence where a person had been. The Velka didn't chase. They curated. Kane gathered the remaining security heads in a maintenance bay lit by one red emergency strip. Volkov sat with his rifle across his knees. Mina Ortiz from logistics, Dr. Yoram Becky from triage, and an old comms engineer named Reese formed a tired semicircle. Reese scratched his beard. They're baiting us. Yes, Kane said. For panic. For patterns. Ortiz shook her head. We can't starve down here. We won't, Kane said. We'll leave in pieces. Becky's voice was thin. Evac ships are on the surface. They'll be watching. Then we stop thinking like evacuees, Kane replied, tapping the map. We stop thinking like prey. Volkov's eyes hardened. And start thinking like what? Kane listened to the tunnel. distant pumps, the soft shuffle of thousands trying not to be heard. Like rescuers, he said. We learn their rules. Then we break them. Reese lifted a finger. I intercepted their beacon again. Same ceremonial packet. But there's a checksum. A routine. Soto slipped in with a portable receiver. It's not a message, she said. It's a scoreboard. The screen filled with symbols that resolved into translation. Kills listed as trophies, each tagged with location and fear index. The hunters recorded how long targets ran, how loud they screamed, whether they fought. Ortiz stared. They grade us. Then we stop giving them data, Kane said. He made choices fast. Food stores were split into sealed caches. Lights were stripped to infrared. Every surface hatch was rigged with a tripwire that triggered smoke and a false distress ping. Teams moved in staggered silence, leaving decoy trails made of scrap and heat packs. It wasn't heroism. It was denial of spectacle. On the fourth night, Volkov returned with a scavenged alien shard, his glove melted around it. One of them got careless, he said. Came into an old warehouse. I dropped the roof. Kane turned the shard in his palm. It was warm, pulsing faintly, like it remembered electricity. You saw it die. Volkov hesitated. It didn't beg. No, Kane said. But it bled light. Soto leaned in. That's a power conduit. If we can make it interface. Reese snorted. Or make it explode. They didn't have time for lab fantasies. The colony was shrinking and the hunters were patient. Kane pushed them toward the one thing he still trusted, roots. Eris 9 had an old ore pipeline under the flats, built before the colony expanded. It ended 20 kilometers east at a derelict relay station, abandoned, unshielded, and, crucially, outside the hunters' neat perimeter ring. Kane led the first evac column himself, 27 people, each with one pack, each tethered by cord to the person ahead so no one vanished in the dark. At the relay station, Kane found a battered short-range skiff, hull patched with weld scars. It couldn't outrun a hunter ship. It didn't have to. It only had to slip. Soto crawled into the cockpit and coaxed power from dead cells. I can get us 3 minutes of thrust, she said. Maybe 4. Reese pointed at the sky through a cracked dome. They'll see ignition. Then we don't ignite, Kane said. Volkov stared. How do you fly without burning? Kane held up the alien shard. We borrow their fire. They wired the shard into the skiff's engine cradle with scavenged copper and steady hands. When Soto powered the system, orange lines crawled across the panel like veins. The engine didn't roar. It purred, quiet, predatory. Soto's eyes widened. It's responding. Kane felt something in his chest loosen, not hope, but leverage. Good, he said. Now we learn. They launched without a flare, sliding out of the relay station like a blade leaving a sheath. Above them, Velka ships hung in the torn sky, elegant and indifferent. None turned. The skiff reached the edge of the system and hid in the shadow of a dead moon. There, Kane opened a tight beam and sent one packet toward the nearest human frequency. Coordinates, survivor count, and a phrase he had never expected to transmit. We're still here. Today. Hours later, a reply came, faint and broken. A code he recognized from old SAR networks. Not colony chatter, military salvage. Someone out there was listening. A day after that, another message arrived, clearer. A voice. Human. Female. Unknown skiff, identify. You're on a dark channel. Kane pressed transmit. Commander Elias Kane, Eris 9 Search and Rescue. We have survivors. We have contact with an aggressor species. They hunt us. Silence, then. How many? Not enough, Kane said. But enough to learn. Learn what? The voice asked. Kane glanced at the shard glowing faintly in the engine bay, at the quiet skiff wrapped in moon shadow. How to make hunters come closer, he replied, without giving them what they want. Fear arrived in the Velka fleet as an error. It surfaced first in the tallies, missing entries where trophies should have been. A hunter vanished near Eris 9's outer dark and the scoreboard registered nothing. No scream index, no pursuit arc, no ceremonial end. The archive flagged the absence as corruption. Then another hunter failed to return. Then a third. Silence stacked where celebration belonged. High Harvester Zirak Varel watched the ledger ripple. "Pray do not erase," he said. "They are erased." A subordinate bowed, spines low. "Supreme Huntmaster, the prey species, humans, are producing outcomes inconsistent with doctrine." "Doctrine is law," Zirak replied. "Law is galaxy." Yet his eyes lingered on the blank spaces. Far from the Velka Council ring, in the cold halo of a dead moon, Elias Kane studied a different ledger. Timestamps, vector cones, engine signatures. The Black Signal fleet, 3 skiffs, a converted tug, and 1 scavenged cutter, hung motionless, wrapped in thermal baffles and darkness. They were small enough to be ignored. They were not ignored. "Contact," Soto murmured. "Single Velka scout, drifting our way. Slow." Kane didn't look up. "Let it." Volkov frowned. "We could jump." "No," Kane said. "We want curiosity." They had learned the hunter's habits by subtraction. Velka scouts approached alone, trusting ritual spacing to keep prey predictable. They broadcast beacons rich with ceremony, poor with encryption. They valued proximity, not redundancy. The rules were a gift. Ortiz leaned over the table, tapping a point in space. "If it closes to 5,000 kilometers, it'll deploy the map." "Then we give it a map," Kane said. "Just not ours." The scout slid closer, elegant and confident, its hull gleaming with ember veins. Kane raised a hand. Reese triggered the first layer. A distress call bloomed across the dark, human-coded, ragged, desperate. It spoke of wounded, of oxygen loss, of a last stand. The scout altered course immediately. Hunger translated as duty. "Hook set," Volkov said. "Patience," Kane replied. When the scout reached the phantom coordinates, the second layer unfolded. Heat blooms flared and scattered like fleeing bodies, decoys tugged by thrusters. The scout's sensors drank it in. The hunter advanced. "Now," Kane said. The dead moon woke. Grave anchors snapped on, invisible hands tugging the scout into a shallow well it hadn't scanned for. The hunter corrected, overcorrected. Kane felt the tremor through the hull as the third layer activated, ionized dust seeded days before, now lit into a blinding lattice. The scout's targeting whited out. Volkov keyed the cutter. "Weapons hot." "Not yet," Kane said. The scout's voice cut across open channels, sharp and affronted. "Prey manipulates space." "Observation," Kane replied calmly. "Correction." He opened a tight beam, not a threat, not a taunt, coordinates to a gap. An escape route. The scout took it, pride intact, and fled. Soto stared. "You let it go." Kane nodded. "It will tell them we make mistakes. That we panic. That we run." Reese smiled thinly. "And that something here scares it." They didn't wait. The fleet shifted, slow as thought, slipping from the moon's shadow into a corridor of cold. Kane wanted the Velka to follow patterns that no longer existed. Days later, the Velka came in force. 3 hunting ships entered the corridor together, an indulgence born of annoyance. Kane watched their formation tighten, ritual tightening into discipline. "Layer check," he said. "Anchors primed," Ortiz answered. "Dust seeded," Soto said. "Voices ready," Reese added. Kane closed his eyes and breathed. "Remember," he told them, "we don't win by killing. We win by teaching." The hunters advanced. Kane triggered the voices. Human speech poured into the corridor, overlapping, contradictory, arguments, prayers, jokes, last messages recorded and replayed. Not fear, but clutter. The hunters hesitated, systems parsing for meaning that wasn't there. "Now," Kane said. The corridor folded. Grave anchors fired in sequence, not to trap, but to steer. Dust lattices ignited, then collapsed, leaving pockets of blind. Kane guided the fleet through a gap that existed only for a heartbeat. One hunter clipped an anchor and spun. Another broke formation to assist. The third surged forward, alone. Target isolated, Volkov said, wonder in his voice. Kane's hand hovered. He saw Eris 9's flats in his mind, the neat hole in the concrete, the smoke. He pushed the memory aside. Fire, he said. The cutter's improvised lance struck the hunter's flank, not to pierce, but to overload the conduit Volkov had salvaged days earlier. The hunter's chest light stuttered. The ship tried to broadcast ceremony and choked on static. Pray, the Velka voice crackled. Pray. Quiet, Kane said, and cut the channel. The ship died without spectacle. No scream. No chase. Just a drifting hulk cooling in the dark. The remaining hunters pulled back. Their beacons flickered, uncertain. Kane didn't pursue. He logged the kill, sparse and clinical, then erased the entry. Hours later, Velka channels crackled alive across the region. Orders layered over ritual. Spacing doctrines amended. Solo hunts suspended. On the council ring, Zirak Varel stood rigid as reports stacked. Prey manipulates law, he said. A lesser huntmaster spoke, voice tight. Supreme huntmaster, the humans do not flee correctly. They do not produce fear. They erase. Zirak's gaze hardened. Fear is not optional. Then we are losing it, the huntmaster said. Zirak turned away from the ledger. Summon the armada. We will end curiosity. In the corridor, Kane received the surge, Velka massing, energy signatures brightening like a wound reopening. He gathered his people. They're done playing, Volkov said. Yes, Kane replied. And so are we. Soto swallowed. If they come all at once. We won't be here, Kane said. We will be where they expect us to be afraid. Ortiz frowned. Where's that? Kane brought up a star chart and marked a point near a dying sun, its gravity snarled and dangerous. Here, he said. We let them see us run. Reese chuckled without humor. You're baiting gods. Kane met his eyes. No, he said. We're teaching predators what it feels like to choose wrong. The fleet aligned, engines whispering borrowed fire. Kane sent one message on an open Velka band, a single human sentence, stripped of ornament. Come find US. Then they jumped, leaving a corridor full of questions behind them while, for the first time in Velka memory, hunters pursued with something new tightening their formations. Not hunger. Dread. The dying sun had no name. Charts marked it with a catalog number and a warning glyph, then left it alone. Its light was thin and cruel, stripped by age, gravity twisted into snarls that bent trajectories into lies. Kane chose it because hunters trusted clean arenas. The black signal fleet arrived first and cut power until even thought felt loud. The sun's pale glare leaked around their hulls, painting everything the color of bone. Kane stood in the cutter's command cradle and watched Velka signatures bloom at the system's edge, many, disciplined, furious. They followed, Soto said, voice steady. They always do, Kane replied. The Velka armada advanced in ritual geometry, rings sliding into place, weapons bright and confident. Kane let them see the fleet, small, damaged, running. He let them taste the chase. Open band, Kane said. A Velka voice poured through, amplified and severe. Prey flees to sacred gravity. Ignorance compounds error. Kane smiled without warmth. You taught us where fear belongs. The first volley split the dark. Kane rolled the cutter hard and dove toward the sun's warped pull. The fleet scattered on staggered vectors, each skiff peeling away as if panicked. The armada followed, formation tightening, pilots hungry to close. Anchor timers, Kane said. Set, Ortiz answered. Dust? Kane asked. Seeded, Reese said. Ion clouds are sleeping. Kane counted heartbeats and felt the gravity catch. The sun reached for the hunters, for everyone. Kane let it take them just enough. Now, he said. The system changed character. Grave anchors snapped on in a cascade that didn't trap the Velka ships, it bent their certainty. Trajectories slid. Weapon solutions wavered. The sun's pull amplified, then stuttered, then amplified again as anchors pulsed in rhythm. Ion dust bloomed into curtains that fractured sensors and painted false horizons. The Velka fired anyway. Beams curved, missed, stitched empty space. One hunter clipped another and spun, its perfect symmetry ruined. Another corrected and overcorrected, engine screaming. "Hold fire," Kane ordered. "Let them feel it." On the open band, Velka voices overlapped, sharp with command and disbelief. "Maintain doctrine. Reform ring. Stabilize." A flagship surged forward, brute force over finesse, its chest core blazing like a challenge. Kane felt the cutter shudder as gravity bit harder. "Elias," Soto said quietly, "we're at tolerance." Kane nodded. "We're almost done." He switched channels, tight beam to the flagship. "Zirak Varel," he said. "You wanted an end." The reply came after a pause long enough to register. "Prey presumes names." "I presume choice," Kane said. "You don't hunt to survive. You hunt to feel." Silence. Then Zirak's voice, colder. "Fear is law." Kane keyed the final layer. The ion curtains collapsed inward, not blinding now but revealing clear lanes through chaos. Kane drove the fleet into those lanes, weaving through the sun's warped pull as if it were a tool. Velka gunners fired into ghosts. Human skiffs slid past on borrowed fire, quiet and precise. "Targets?" Volkov asked. "No trophies," Kane said. "Objectives." They struck anchors on the Armada's periphery, not to kill ships but to unmake formations. One by one, Velka vessels lost the ability to share vectors, to trust the ring. The sun did the rest, dragging hulls into elongated arcs that tore engines free. The flagship held, stubborn and proud. Zirak opened a channel, fury wrapped in ritual. "You degrade the hunt." "We end it," Kane replied. "You cannot erase what the galaxy is," Zirak said. "Predators rise." Kane thought of Eris 9's tunnels, of tethered hands and quiet feet. "Then learn," he said, and cut thrust. The cutter drifted, naked, into the flagship's path. Weapons locked. For a breath, the Armada believed it had one. Kane triggered the last anchor. Gravity folded like paper. The flagship's chest core flared as conduits overloaded, not from impact but from feedback, its own power turned inward by the sun's twisted pull. The ship screamed in light and went dark, tumbling toward the dying star. On every Velka channel, ceremony shattered. Flagship compromised. "Withdraw. Withdraw." Kane didn't chase. He watched ships flee, limp, scatter. The sun claimed what it would. The rest escaped with the lesson burned into them. He opened a wideband, human-coded, then led it with Velka translation. His voice carried without heat. "We don't want your fear," he said. "We don't want your rituals. Leave our space. If you return, we won't run." A long pause. Then a broken transmission from Zirak, distorted, pride stripped thin. "What are you?" Kane closed his eyes. "We're the species that learned." He cut the channel. The system quieted. The sun kept dying. Kane felt the tremor ease from the hull and from himself. "Status," he said. Soto exhaled. "Fleet intact. Minor damage. No pursuit." Volkov leaned back, hands shaking now that it was over. "We did it." Kane shook his head. "We started it." They gathered in the cutter's narrow bay, faces drawn, alive. Kane looked at them, at grease-stained sleeves, at eyes bright with a future they'd stolen back. "We don't become them," he said. "We don't hunt for sport. We defend by ending the game." Ortiz nodded. "And if others ask how?" Kane brought up the map of human space, dotted with dark scars and stubborn lights. "We teach them to be quiet," he said. "To be patient. To choose." The fleet aligned and jumped, leaving the dying sun to its work. Across Velka space, ledgers updated. Blank spaces multiplied. Rituals rewrote themselves around absence. And in places long hunted, species lifted their eyes to a new signal threading the dark. No promise of rescue, no boast of dominance. Only a simple truth, carried on steady beams. You are not alone.